Imagine you're managing money for a bank and someone asks you a simple question. How risky is your portfolio and how much money should you keep aside in case things go bad? That number you calculate is called a risk measure. But here's the catch. Not every risk measure makes logical sense. Some actually give weird answers. So finance came up with something called a coherent risk measure, which simply means a smart, sensible, and mathematically correct way to measure risk. A coherent risk measure follows four common sense rules. First, if one portfolio always loses more money than another, it must have higher risk. This is called monotonicity. For example, if portfolio A loses 10,000 rupees and portfolio B loses 5,000, obviously A is riskier. If your model says otherwise, throw it away. Second, diversification should reduce risk. This is subadditivity. If you invest only in tech stocks, that's risky. Only pharma stocks, also risky. But mixing both usually reduces overall risk because they don't crash together. So the combined risk should be less than the sum of individual risks. That's literally why mutual funds exist. Third, if you double your investment, risk should also double. This is positive homogeneity. If 1 lakh has a risk of 5,000, 2 lakhs should have a risk of 10,000. Risk must scale proportionally. And fourth, adding cash should reduce risk. This is translation invariance. If your portfolio risk is 10 lakhs and you add 3 lakhs cash, your risk becomes 7 lakhs. More cushion, less danger. Simple. Any risk measure that satisfies all four of these rules is called coherent. Now let's talk about the actual types you'll see in real life. The most important one is expected shortfall, also called CVAR. This looks at the worst losses and takes their average. Suppose your 5 worst days had losses of 10, 12, 15, 20, and 25,000. Expected shortfall takes the average about 16,000, so it tells you, when things go really bad, expect around this much loss. It considers tail risk, it rewards diversification, and it follows all four rules, which is why Basel regulations and banks prefer it today. Then there's value at risk, or VAR, which many people know. VAR says something like, with 95% confidence, you won't lose more than 10,000. Sounds nice, but it hides a big problem. It doesn't tell you what happens after 10,000. You could lose 10,000 or 1 crore. VAR treats both the same. Even worse, sometimes diversification can increase VAR, which breaks the subadditivity rule. So VAR is actually not coherent. That's why regulators are slowly replacing it with expected shortfall. There are also other coherent measures like mean absolute deviation and spectral risk measures. Mean absolute deviation measures the average distance of losses from the mean and is simple, stable, and often used in basic portfolio optimization and academic models. Spectral risk measures assign higher weights to bigger losses, letting you penalize extreme losses more heavily, and are mostly used by hedge funds and advanced quantitative risk models. These two are more advanced and used in research or hedge funds, but for exams and real life, expected shortfall is the star. So the big takeaway is this. A good risk measure must increase with losses, decrease with diversification, scale with position size, and reduce when you add cash. If all four conditions hold, it's coherent. And if you remember just one thing for exams or interviews, remember this line. Expected shortfall is coherent, VAR is not. And that's coherent risk measures explained in the simplest possible way.